right, here we are. Well, thank you all for being here. I have to say it is a great privilege and honor to be in front of you to kick off this amazing weekend that we have in store. And just to be completely transparent, although Mikey told you about my enthusiasm, I have to say it sort of was a little bit of an intimidating proposition to plan an opening talk to unite fields as diverse and as extensive and as important and as amazing as these three. But it really kicked off a journey for me in preparation for this talk of what I've come to realize is the converging forces of psychedelics, technology, and meditation as medicine, really united by a common element of experience. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. I also want to make really clear that I don't consider myself an expert in psychedelics or meditation. What I want to share with you today is my perspectives through the lens of someone that's been in neuroscience for 30 years, with examples from entities and technologies that I've created and researched over the years. So let's begin by talking about experience. Experience is as core to the human condition as other concepts like consciousness or mind or soul, and it is really just as elusive to define. I found sort of perusing the Wikipedia page on experience as satisfying as my YouTube comments, so it's really not the type of place that you could just quickly download what it means, and try to think in your own minds what experience is. You might find like it's sort of hard to define it by not using the term experience, which shows you how core it is. My perspective of experience is that it is an emergent phenomena from the perception-action cycle, which evolves from unicellular organisms to guide their interaction with their surroundings for their survival. So toxins and nutrients that they had to sense and had to either move towards or away from in response. This led to the evolution of our brains, where sensations have become perceptions, more complex interpretations of our environments, and movements become actions and then become behaviors. With the evolution of the human brain, what has happened is that a very important critical pause has been inserted between perception and action, and that is where the human mind currently inhabits. So with that conceptualization of experience, we could realize that all of human experience has really emerged from this perception-action cycle, and in an incredibly complex way that I'm going to try to break down a little bit from thinking about this over the last several months. The first is that experiences can be evoked either by our top-down goals and intentions of having an experience, or be driven by bottom-up stimuli from the environment. It can be expressed either completely internally as mental imagery and thoughts and feelings, or externally by our interactions with the environment through perceptions and actions. It can be engaged in a singular event or in repetitive occurrences that occur over long periods of time. And the effects that it can have can be transient and fleeting or enduring and even somewhat permanent. So with this as a conceptual framework, and it's still a work in progress, but I think it serves as a launching point, we could start comparing and understanding and defining different types of experiences. And what I want to do is use this as a launching point to think about experience as medicine. Now, I first want to say that I'm using the term medicine here to apply to the approach of anything that enhances our health. So just as equally to treatments that we might have for illnesses, as well as enriching the human condition, even if you're starting from what we might think of as a healthy baseline. So with that in mind, experience as medicine are those experiences that are designed to lead to enduring and positive benefits on health. And when it comes to the health of our brain and minds, it's really driven by the mechanism that experience is a powerful driving force of the human brain's plasticity, right? That is that wondrously complex dance of change that occurs in all of our brains all the time at every level. Its structure, its function, its chemistry is constantly modifying itself in response to experience. And so these experiences can be designed in such a way to promote that type of long and lasting benefits. And that's really what I want to share. Now, we know how powerful the relationship is between experience and long-lasting outcomes, right? You could witness a single tragic event and detrimentally impact the function of your brain for the rest of your life. We call that PTSD. Can we create similarly powerful experiences to lead to these positive and enduring benefits? And I'd say two of perhaps the most quintessential examples of experiential medicine would be psychedelics and meditation. Right? These practices, humans have used these, evidence suggests, 5,000 years ago. And their role as medicine has existed in cultures around the world for millennia. And many of this has carried forward till today, with the traditions that surround them being relatively preserved and even being sort of translated into modern times. There are some really interesting aspects of how these experiences can be thought of as medicine that contrast similarities and differences between psychedelics and medicine. And I just want to sort of break that down a little bit. Psychedelics can invoke these experiences and do largely through bottom-up mechanisms, right, where the molecules are the environmental stimuli that trigger them. Meditation may be the most top-down triggered experience that we can have as humans, where the intentions solely guide that experience as it unfolds. For meditation, most of that experience is expressed internally, while for psychedelics, it's sort of a mixed bag, right? There's internal, could be mental imagery, it could be feelings, insights, emotions, but it's also could be external, distortions or modifications of your perception. From the medical point of view, meditation is usually engaged in as extensive, deep, repetitive occurrences, a practice, while psychedelics have been studied even as a singular event, or very rare events. Of course, this is not always the case, but it is sort of a differences in how they're often used from a medicinal perspective. But what they have in common is that the evidence shows that they lead to enduring positive impacts. Now, it might be easy for you to wrap your head around meditation as being an experiential medicine. It is a little more challenging for some people, maybe not the people in this room, to think about psychedelics in this way. They would think about it as an example of a molecular medicine. And from some perspectives, that's correct, right? It is the inducing factor. But the data shows that the positive and lasting benefits are really related to the experience itself. And more than that, for both of these, it's the contextual elements that really guide these effects. So the priming, the setting up of expectations before the experience, during the experience, the setting, the environmental stimuli, the processing that occurs immediately after, and the long-term integration of this experience with your other life experiences. This is true for both meditation and for psychedelics. There's a really wonderful paper I just read by Robin Carhart-Harris showing and really breaking down this perspective of context having be a very important part of the medicinal aspects of psychedelics. There's actually not a ton of research on this. I think it's a really fertile ground, especially for the people in this audience. There is a little work showing that the music that is presented during these experiences are associated with positive benefits in the future. And some of those positive benefits of the quality of the experience itself has been shown to be more predictive of beneficial outcomes in the future than, for example, the dosage, showing that this is really about the experience that's leading to these effects. Another common element is usually the delivery of these two experiential medicines rely on a human expert. And there's a lot of advantages to this. But what I want to talk about briefly are some of what I view as the limitations of this particular delivery system. The first is accessibility, right? So human experts can't be everywhere. And when we're talking about delivering critical treatments to 500 million people in this world that are suffering debilitating effects of anxiety and depression and deficits in attention and memory, that ability to scale is really important and something that we need to consider, which is a challenge that we face right now. The other problem is reproducibility. Not every expert is created equal. Not every guru is actually a guru. And therefore, we have to think about how we have the quality of experience raised as high a bar across as many people as possible. The other problem is that the variability in treatment effects leads to a challenge of testability through randomized controlled trials. And although that's not the be-all and end-all, for our regulatory systems and professionals and academics to fully embrace this and to move this from being alternative, where I think it's not serving as many people as possible, into the mainstream, this type of research is really critical. And it does suffer because of this delivery system right now. The other problem is personalization. Because even an expert that is trained might not have deep knowledge about the quality of your experience in the moment, there's only so far that personalization of that experience as a treatment can go for you. And so this is sort of a jumping off point to think about the opportunity of technology to support, not to replace, to support the delivery systems that we have of psychedelics and meditations as medicines. And even more interestingly, to think about technology itself as an experiential medicine. Now, it's important to pause and say technology, non-invasive, consumer-friendly technology, has challenged our brains in many fundamental ways. I wrote an entire book on this topic called The Distracted Mind, Ancient Brains in a High-Tech World. And I'm not going to talk about that, but it is important to place that in perspective as we look forward. And I think that there is an opportunity to build technologies that actually enhance what makes us human and not diminish us. And I think that is broad, thinking about our attention, our perception, our memory, our reasoning and decision-making, our imagination, creativity, how we regulate our emotions, and our empathy and compassion. That is the opportunity that we face, that we can use technology to accomplish those goals. Now, this is a really important time to have this conversation because, as you probably all know, we have the emergence in the consumer world of very powerful technologies: virtual reality, augmented reality, motion capture devices, smart wearable physiological recordings, and machine learning and other artificial intelligence technologies. These have the potential to have really negative impacts on our consciousness, or they can be designed in a way that actually helps promote these abilities of our mind. Now, I believe that one of the most effective ways to use these technologies is to create what I'm going to define now as the closed-loop experience. So a closed-loop experience is where you interact, you engage in your environment, whether it be the external or the internal environment, and data is collected that reflects the quality of that experience, ideally in real time. That data can then be used to update the environment and that experience so that it is personalized for you and targeted. Now, maybe that seemed a little abstract, so I'm going to break it down with a cartoon of our brains engaging in one of the most common experiential technologies that we have, video games. So here's a view of how a closed-loop video game would work. So our brain is playing a game, and of course it's our brain playing the game, moving our body, and your behaviors are creating performance metrics, like your response time and your accuracy, which can be recorded with sensors with just milliseconds delays, even like an accelerometer or a tap screen. And so that software can understand something about you in the moment, and then use that data in real time to feed back an environment that is challenging you just at that perfect level. So it's not so hard that you give up or not so easy that it's boring. We call the flow state. It can also give you rewards and feedback in real time, which every game developer in the world knows how you create deep immersion and engagement and fun in this process. This closed-loop experience is using the mechanics of the video game to activate brain networks selectively. That is something that we have never achieved with any other technology. We have not achieved it with any molecule or any brain stimulation. The only way that I am aware of to activate brain networks selectively is through engagement in an experience. And so the mechanics of the game activate that selective brain network, and then the closed-loop system applies pressure to it. So your brain's own inherent plasticity changes itself to optimize its function. We also have the ability to bring in those other technologies I mentioned, like motion capture and physiological recording, so that this software engine could understand you in real time in a deeper way, your emotional responses, your facial expressions, how your body is moving, and feed back a richer, more real-world environment through advances in augmented reality and virtual reality. We can then wrap this all together with machine learning algorithms and AI to create a truly integrated, multimodal, closed-loop experience. And I believe that this is the core of what will be at the future of using the technologies as their own type of experiential medicine. And what better use is there of AI than to advance HI, human intelligence? And that is sort of what we have built here by putting those type of systems into this closed loop. So I'm not going to break down this data. I'm just going to tell you a quick story. Right here at UCSF, I've been on this campus. I've been faculty here for 13 years now. I started in this building, that building, and now our lab is just right over here, the building to your left. 10 years ago, I got frustrated with what had already been a 20-year journey in neurology and neuroscience. Just basically reporting how our brain works and how it fails when it's sort of presented with too much information. And so 10 years ago, I challenged myself to think about how we can create new types of treatments to improve how our brains function. And so I built my first closed-loop video game. It's called Neuroscape. I did it with friends of mine that worked at LucasArts. It took us a year to build it. 3 years to do the research studies. I'm not going to share the data with you right now, but we published this at the end of 2013 in Nature. It was the cover of the journal. You could see there was a great pun that Nature used of game changer. As you probably know, this is like a musician being on like Rolling Stones cover. So it was like a very dramatic moment in our lives. And what it really did was set up a series of next steps that I'm going to share with you very quickly. The first was that we did not want this to live and then die, as often happens, as an academic exercise. A high-profile publication that gets you tenure, and then you move on to the next one. We wanted this to get into people's lives as a new type of treatment. And so in order to do that, I realized that this is where you navigate. I had to learn how to do this, the complex relationship between academics and industry, and think about how to get this technology outside of UCSF, how to build patent protection around it so that companies are interested in putting millions of dollars in and developing it as a scalable product, something we could not do at UCSF. And so I started a company with friends of mine from the game world called Akili. Now, Akili is sort of a unique technology company because it has an exclusive license to that patent from UCSF. So I am the inventor, UCSF is the owner. That's sort of how the relationship works between us faculty and universities, and Akili has a license. Akili has now spent years working on a much, much better game and experience from the point of view of art, music, story, and rewards, but at the same time preserving the basic mechanics and the game engine that led to the effects that we report in the Nature paper. So we think about this as a closed-loop video game. And what has occurred over the years are multiple clinical trials, still ongoing, with conditions that you could read in front of you, to understand how a tool like this, an experiential medicine delivered through technology, through a digital treatment, might lead to these type of improvements. I just want to mention one study. We actually now have completed a phase 3 trial for children with ADHD. So this is a prospectively designed, multi-site, double-blinded, placebo-controlled, randomized trial with a video game on children with ADHD. And we hit our primary outcome of showing that we can improve attention in these children that engage on this treatment versus a placebo. This is now positioned in front of the FDA, hopefully to be the first cleared non-drug digital treatment for ADHD in the process. Thank you. It's a long process. The first prescribable video game, and a new category of medicine at the FDA. This is a de novo pathway of a true digital treatment, a digital medicine based on experiences. So, stepping off from this, I want to now go back to UCSF. It's really literally hundreds of feet to this side of you. We have a center called Neuroscape. So what happened in my laboratory is that no one wanted to do the same basic cognitive neuroscience. Everyone wanted to do what we now think of as translational neuroscience. We use the tools of neuroscience. You could learn a lot about the brain through clever experimental design, but the main goal is to improve function of our brains, or at least the understanding of how our brains function, and bridge this gap that we see exists between technology and neuroscience. I just want to give you a picture of what our lab looks like right next door. This is the control room. Here's 3 different views of the labs, 3 different laboratories, where we present to our participants interactive media that we designed specifically to improve brain function. Right outside of this room, there's an MRI scanner. On the other side, there's a phlebotomy room for blood draws, so we can do really, really deep dives into understanding the effects of these types of treatment. We're building 12 more laboratories on this campus. Right across the quad, you'll see a building under construction. That's the Weill Institute of Neuroscience. We have a psychiatry building on the other side of our hospital opening, 6 in both of those places. We built a lab recently in Lausanne, building one in Nice. And my wife and I just got back from an extended trip to China, where we'll be also building these labs there. There's a lot of people around the world that recognize the opportunity to use technology in this way. So that's an exciting future that we're entering now. So over the last, thank you. So over the last 8 years, and I'm not going to have time to break this all down for you, we've been building other experiential medicines through closed-loop video games. You could see their names right here. All of them are closed-loop experiences that bring art, music, and story, and rewards, and usability, the cloud, artificial intelligence, and machine learning into the mix. They use different technologies from virtual reality. We have a considerable amount of work using brain stimulation during video gameplay to enhance those effects, and 3 papers on that right now. I just want to pause and talk about one of these, a game over here that we have been working on for the last 5 years. It's known as Metatrain. You heard mention to it. This is a project that I've been working on with Jack Kornfield, who you may know is a thought leader, created Spirit Rock in the meditation and mindfulness world, and a really dear friend of mine now. I felt like we were 2 aliens when we first met 5 years ago, but that wasn't the case. That was just a misperception, like when you stand across from that person and have to discover them. When I was talking to Jack right here in my office, we had a 2-hour deep dive. We now do that every several months. I was really nervous to tell him that I was working on a video game meditation experience, because I thought he'd think I was like destroying like his life dream and the integrity of the culture and the traditions. And he was like, "That's awesome. Can I work on that with you?" And I was like, this is great, because I have really taken a lot of care to recognize areas that I'm not an expert in and work with experts. And so we built this game called Metatrain. I'm not going to go into the details of it, but it does use a closed-loop system to help improve focus, internal focus, recognition of where your mind is, and then your ability to return your focus to a point like your breath. We now have a paper coming out in the next 2 weeks in another Nature journal, Nature Human Behavior. We're really excited about that. Our publication rate has definitely slowed down as we've built all these technologies. Jack is an author on this paper. And what we show is that in healthy 20-year-olds, 6 weeks of engagement with Metatrain can improve numerous measures of attention and working memory, as well as showing the brain mechanisms involved in that improvement. So you'll see that paper very soon. We're really excited about it. What you won't see until hopefully later in this year is another paper that we submitted using the exact same game, but for foster care children in India who have suffered adverse life events. So this was our goal, to really show the accessibility of this type of mobile technology to deliver these benefits to places in the world where we have difficulty even getting doctors or pharmaceuticals in. And what we showed here is that we replicate this finding exactly, improvements in sustained attention in these children. We recorded fMRI to show what happens in their brains, and here we showed positive behavioral benefits 1 year later. So that paper was just submitted for publication, but it gives you just a glimpse into how we think about integrating with existing practices like meditation to use the closed-loop system to help with accessibility, personalization, and the targeting of those experiences to lead to benefits. So just as an example. Thank you. All right, let's step into the future now. For those of you who have not seen the glass brain, this is the glass brain. It is where we are going with this. This is actually my glass brain that you're looking at. So this is a combination of MRI and EEG. You could see the cortex of my brain in purple, and the golden fibers are what connects different brain areas. And what you're seeing on top, integrated with the MRI, is real-time EEG recording with 64-channel wireless EEG, the different colors and flashes represent different frequencies. In real time, we're doing artifact correction, source localization, multivariate range of causality, and really trying to understand how we can visualize and, more importantly, just gather data about the brain while we interact with it. And this is still a work in progress. It's really a proof of concept, but the goal for this is to be able to have high resolution, both in the time and the space domain, given the constrictions of these technologies, to be able to use this data to guide closed-loop systems. So if we have an experience that's not just being driven based on your performance or even your heart rate, but based upon what is going on inside your brain at the moment, we think that we could target the adaptivity and the rewards to those brain processes that most need to be optimized. So we've been doing a study for 3 years to use these type of algorithms to accomplish that. We also have interest in using real-time brain data to guide the stimulation parameters and tools like TDCS and ACS, using direct current and alternating current to enhance the plasticity of the system while you engage in it. So this is just like a sneak preview, but it's something that we're excited about, and we think it is going to be a part of the future of how we use technology and neuroimaging to better accomplish our goals. All right, one other experiential technology that I want to talk about: nature, right? Probably the most ancient experiential technology, right? Our engagement with the natural world, and the data showing that it can lead to benefits in mood and stress. But what I find really interesting is also restoration of cognitive fatigue. So the physical fitness world has invested a lot of energy into not just understanding about how improving your physical capabilities, but how you need to restore, especially when you're training, so that you could re-engage at a high level. But in our domain, in the cognitive enhancement world, we often ignore the fact that we do fatigue cognitively. And I think a really important potential area of technology is to think about engagement with natural worlds presented in the digital domain, not to exclude the real world, but just to be able to have control about it, like in a virtual reality environment with EEG recording, so that we could create a type of closed-loop nature experience. And we're starting to explore this now as an opportunity to lead to restoration after an intensive period of training with a closed-loop video game. So just provocative, but a direction that we are moving in. But I think that we can do a whole lot better than what I just told you. And one of the areas that I've become recently really inspired with is this idea of sensory synchronization, right? So this is a very core principle in neuroscience, in that when you are exposed to sensory stimuli in the world in unison, in synchrony, it leads to a physiological phenomena in our brain that we call multisensory integration. It means that how different cortices in your brain process information is different depending on how other areas are processing. So your visual cortex will respond differently if you're also hearing something at the same time. And the synchrony is very critical. This is how we create the psychological constructs of reality. It leads to the unity effect, the fact that it's not just a jumble of information coming into your brain, but there are peoples, places, objects, and time is really emergent phenomena of multisensory integration. So with that in mind, couldn't we use our experiences that we create with technology to drive this phenomena to the next level? And that is something that I'm doing now. I just recently revealed a new company called Sync. It's still in the very early stages, but I think it's really appropriate for this group, just at least to activate your imagination on where we can go. So Sync, as you could tell by the name, the goal is sensory synchronization, but just to bring on all of the senses, all of them at a much higher level. And to do that, I felt like we needed a new piece of hardware. And so this is the design for something called the sensory immersion vessel. Now, I call this a vessel because I don't view this as a pod. A pod contains or constrains you. This is a vessel that you take a journey in, right? Like it's a vehicle for your mind. That's the idea behind it. And it is now completely built out, right? So this is a quick sneak peek, the first time I'm actually ever showing this, of what this actually looks like in the real world. Now, I just want to break it down for you that the idea here is so that you can see, hear, smell, and feel across multiple domains nature experiences. That's really the guiding point. And with real-time physiological recordings Inside the vessel, we can create closed-loop personalized experiences to guide you through this type of nature environment. So that's the goal. Now, what do we do with this, right? I mean, I largely built it because I wanted to own one myself, to tell you all the truth about it. But what we're excited about is first thinking about this from maybe not the highest level, but one that I think could have real benefit, what I think of as more of the low-hanging fruit. How can this be a really powerful relaxation experience, or the opposite, a captivating, sort of exhilarating restoration experience from the fatigue that we face? But where I think, especially for this audience, the more interesting potential is, what is it like to have a meditation medical treatment inside an environment where your entire natural world is representing your own physiology? I think there's a real lot of interesting potential there. And then, with this degree of multisensory integration that few of us, I'd say none of us, have ever really experienced yet, can we create truly transformative experiences, like events at the level of psychedelic molecular experiences that could really change how we perceive the world, ourselves, and nature? I say it's an open-ended question, but I think it's a really exciting one to explore. And then, of course, it's bringing this together to really think about the ultimate opportunity that we now face, this new era of experiential medicine where software designed to bring principles of meditation could be integrated with devices like this. And then, of course, how we bring on the other tools that we have come to realize have tremendous benefits on us. So I really want to leave you with this. It's obviously a vision of the future, but the opportunity for integrating technology with these amazing traditional, ancient experiential medicines is to have new ability for accessibility, reproducibility, testability, and a personalized experience that could lead to more enduring and positive benefits on our cognition. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention.